Welcome to my channel. This is part 2 of my series dealing with prophecies of the end time. If you'd like to watch it from the beginning, just click on the link to part 1 in the upper left hand corner of the screen or in the description box. In this video, I'm going to be dealing with world calamities as is mentioned in Matthew chapter 24 verses 7 through 8, which states, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." There have always been wars, famines, pestilences, and earthquakes, but statistics show that these catastrophes are on the rise. In terms of wars, between 1870 to 2001, the frequency of wars increased steadily by 2% a year on average. Between 1870 and 1913, the frequency of pairwise conflicts, that is, the number of pairs of countries involved in conflicts, increased on average by 6% per year. The frequency of wars increased by 17% per year in the period of the First and Second World Wars, and by 31% per year during the Cold War. In the 1990s, the frequency of wars between states rose by 36% per year. Professor Mark Harrison from the University of Warwick stated, "The number of conflicts has been rising on a stable trend. Because of 2 world wars, the pattern is obviously disturbed between 1914 and 1945. But remarkably, after 1945, the frequency of wars resumed its upward course on pretty much the same path as before 1913. Not to mention, rumors of wars are rampant in our day and age, especially with rumors of the United States possibly going to war with various countries like Russia, North Korea, and Iran, to name a few. About famines, the word famine means extreme scarcity of food and/or hunger and starvation. Do we have food shortages and starvation in the world today? You better believe it. According to World Hunger Facts statistics, this year it is estimated that over 4 million children under the age of 5 years old will die from hunger-related causes, and chronic hunger affects more than 925 million people in the world. However, the paradox of this is that global supplies of food far outstrips demand. In other words, there is more than enough food in the world to feed everyone. However, certain contributing factors plunge many into famine and chronic hunger, including poverty, armed conflicts, and discrimination, to name a few. And the top 5 countries which experience the most hunger include India, China, Pakistan, Ethiopia, and Bangladesh. Now I'll talk about pestilence. Pestilence is a fatal epidemic disease. The bubonic plague is a good example, which has killed over 2 million people in the first 14th to 17th and 19th centuries. Between the 14th and 17th centuries, it actually wiped out over 30% of Europe's population. However, we haven't seen an outbreak of bubonic plague in a while, so I'm not going to include that in my list of epidemics in recent history. Nonetheless, we do have a deadly worldwide epidemic today. That epidemic is AIDS. An estimated 1.5 million people died from AIDS-related illnesses in 2013, and an estimated 39 million people with AIDS have died worldwide since the epidemic began. Sub-Saharan Africa bears the biggest burden of HIV and AIDS, with almost 70% of the global total of new HIV infections for 2013. And the number of people infected with AIDS has risen dramatically since 1990. The number of people living with HIV rose from around 8 million in 1990 to 34 million by the end of 2011. Aside from that, West Africa has recently been hit with an epidemic of Ebola, which infected nearly 25,000 people and killed nearly 10,500 people between March 2014 to March 2015. There was also a Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. Waves of mutating influenza viruses swept through the military lines of the armies fighting in World War I to the civilian population across the globe. An estimated 675,000 Americans died in a matter of months, and 20 million people died across the globe before the pandemic subsided. Now we'll discuss earthquakes. We have seen some devastating earthquakes in recent history, especially the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake, which is the deadliest earthquake of the 21st century. The quake itself was an estimated 9.1 to 9.3 magnitude and resulted in a tsunami which had waves of nearly 100 feet high and killed over 230,000 people. Also in 2005, an earthquake in Kashmir, Pakistan killed an estimated 79,000 people. The quake measured a magnitude of 7.6. Another 106,000 people were injured by the quake, most of which were in Pakistan. Then there was the 2010 Haiti earthquake, which was a magnitude 7 and had more than 50 aftershocks. Between 46,000 to 316,000 lives were lost, along with 250,000 homes destroyed and 30,000 businesses. Moreover, 1.8 million people were left homeless after the disaster. Not to mention, the frequency of magnitude 7 earthquakes and above has skyrocketed since 1863. For example, for the 38-year period between 1863 to 1900, 12 magnitude 7 earthquakes were recorded. Between 1901 to 1938, that number rose to 53. Between 1939 to 1976, that number rose again to 71. And between 1977 to 2014, there were 164 recorded magnitude 7 and above earthquakes. It's interesting to note that when speaking about earthquakes and other calamities, the Bible says that these are the beginning of sorrows. The word sorrow can also be translated as birth pangs, like contractions that a pregnant woman has when she is getting ready to give birth. The closer she gets to delivering her child, the more frequent her contractions are. Comparing that to the second coming of Jesus, that means that the increased frequency of the worldwide calamities that the Bible talks about are signs that Jesus is coming soon. Are you ready? Have you given your life to Jesus? If not, now is as good a time as any. If you'd like to know more about Jesus and the Bible, I'll leave a link to some free online Bible study guides in the description box. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it. That would help me out a lot. Check me out on some of my social networks as well, like Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr. I'll leave a link to them in the description box. I share more Christian content there. And stay tuned because there's more to come soon. God bless.